How is everybody doing? And welcome back for another Strength Chat episode. Today, I have got a very special guest for you. Today, I am joined by the Director of Training at Hybrid Performance. Today, I'm joined by the one and only Simon Chang. How are you doing?
Doing awesome. No, thank you for having me. I saw that Steffi was on the podcast, so it's a pleasure to follow it up and be a part of Team Hybrid and be on this podcast.
Awesome, yeah. Thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on. I know, I've done a couple of hybrid programs myself, and I've followed the content that you guys put out there, as well as the podcast that Steffi does as well. So yeah, it's really good to have you on, and I'm sure there'll be a couple of topics that I'll be picking your brains on as we go on. But how have you been? What have you been up to? What's been happening in your world?
I've been doing really well. You've probably done the hybrid programs when we were on the web-based, and we just launched a new app in April, and we launched the new app with our new program called Hard Work Pays Off as well with Matt Frazier. So he's made a program, we have it on our app, and then now we're slowly transitioning all our web-based programs, which are new and improved essentially because I've worked with Steffi and Hayden and other coaches here to get this programming in. And obviously we want to keep up with everything evidence-based wise, and then more of our experience as well. We like to say of using that evidence and then using our experience through practice to shaping those programs. So we're transitioning everything slowly to the app, which is a process because at the same time we're going from a Facebook group to a Discord group. I don't know if you've heard of Discord, but there's just a lot of features there, and just having a dev team and people that can code helps a lot with having Discord because you can have a
Yeah, sorry, it's a little bit like a forum. How I've used it before, where people can chat on everything. I've only used it once before, but I likened it to a little bit like a forum, which is pretty cool.
Mhm. Yeah, there's different types of features you can do because it is made by developers. So if you can code, you can essentially put anything you want in there. Like we have bots that assign people roles, so you get in your group, and when you have an active subscription, you get an automatic invite. And if you cancel your subscription, you get kicked out of the group. So it's less manual work than Facebook, and then you're put into the proper group, and then you have all these different types of channels that you can browse through within your group, such as form check or injuries, because we have doctors helping with injuries to help people stay on the program and give them overall guidance, confidence. And then we have a general chat. So it is, yeah, similar like forums, but there's threads among it, which is related to Facebook. So there's just a lot more features, which I love.
Yeah, yeah, plenty of things there, and I'm sure we'll touch on a couple of the developments that you've had in there, a couple of projects to keep you busy. Obviously, the last I feel as though I mention this all the time, and probably people are sick of hearing it, but the last year and a half has been a little bit weird for a lot of people. So how have you got on with your own training, with clients that you work with, and sort of the in-person stuff? I know we obviously do a lot of the online. I know hybrid now have their education courses, which I've bought a few of, which have been really helpful, such as like the habit and the fat loss
Mhm.
courses that you did. But what about the in person stuff and sort of your own training over the last year and a bit?
So when everything actually started, I was living in Calgary back in Canada, staying with my mom, and I was in the process of getting a visa to go to Miami. So essentially, as soon as it started, I had my visa interview a month later, and it kept getting delayed, kept getting delayed, kept getting delayed. But everything was shut down, and I wasn't really training people in person, but just the part of like training at a gym.
Yeah.
Um, Missed out that, so missed out the community, and just seeing how there was no essentially community involved in gyms anymore because again they're all closed. Like people aren't training with each other, they're not communicating. We have such a great community with hybrid that we saw that as an opportunity to essentially expand that and just improve it and make it even better. So that's what we did. We released an at-home program. We released a back to strength program to help people transition from going training to body weight or just back to home at less intensity, less volume, transitioning back to the gym where they have more machines they can overload with weights again. So we did that and just tried to communicate with people as much as possible because again, they're at home. Sometimes people are alone, living on their own, whatever it is. So we did a bunch of online lectures that were free. Um, Again, very, very open community. the group we have, Facebook, whether it's Discord, it goes off all the time because we have people from all over the world, but it's amazing. And then we also have people working from us across the country. So it's been really good there, and it was an awesome opportunity for us, and it was just great to see that transition, and that people really liked it. But that's kind of like what was going on there. And then after months, I was able to move to Miami finally, which was awesome, and it's been great here as well. Things are basically open back up, and the gym's been awesome. We have a new warehouse or factory where our offices are, but yeah, it's been going really well.
Oh, good. And then obviously you spoke there about working with hybrid and the courses that you've done. But for everyone listening who might not know your background, how you got involved in hybrid in terms of the coaching that you do as well. Just want to give a little bit of a background to yourself.
Yeah, for sure. This it's actually kind of a funny story. So I used to train at Fortis in Toronto, and I think this was after I was training for. So this was after I went to Worlds. I was training at Fortis. I'm just training hard. One day I go into the gym. I'm just training, and I see Steffi and Hayden, and I've always looked up to them. I think any power lifter essentially knows who they are. I always thought they were American, even Hayden. Anyways, I got talking to them, just introduced myself. Um, Obviously said like I appreciate everything you guys have done in the industry, really like what you do. And Steffi is Steffi. She's just unbelievably strong and super humble, like one of the nicest people I've ever met. Got talking, and then I guess I found out that Hayden was Canadian, and he actually lived very close to where I lived, maybe 10 minutes. And he was in the process of getting a new visa. So he was actually stuck for a while at the gym we were training at. We are stuck in Canada for a while, for about 6 months, and I just became really good friends with him, and we chatted a lot more. And then he thought I'd be a good fit into the company as a nutrition coach. I was doing more coaching on my own, getting into nutrition, very passionate about it. So he thought I'd be a good fit. And then they took me through the training protocol, which is around 3 to 4 months. And they said I did it fast for that time frame. So it was an awesome training protocol. Like, they have a lot of good systems, a lot of good people in place in terms of management, and the education side is incredible. So I started as a nutrition coach, started coaching clients there, and slowly got more involved into the training side. But from just it was hard not to. I mean, I love training so much, and just seeing the programs and just wanting to learn more. Slowly got more involved in the nutrition side, and it wasn't until a few months ago that I officially became director of training services and started doing more of the programs. But yeah, for the past 2 years, I've been coaching nutrition clients and meeting a ton of awesome people. And as you said, when things started with the pandemic, it's you see how things change for everyone, especially all across the world on that scale, which was shocking. With it was so different for so many people. Some people it was really hard, and some people were like, finally I have a break from work or something like that. It was so different, but it was awesome seeing that. But yeah, that's been my slow kind of transition. It's only been 2 years with hybrid, but it's been awesome every single day.
Yeah, definitely. It's I see what you mean. A funny story, being able to. I don't know, especially when you see, especially over in the UK, especially some of the top lifters that I've seen compete at Worlds and that sort of stuff, and you see them in the gym, and then you realise that actually they're just sort of normal people. They're not these sort of like, far beyond crazy things that you just see on the world stage. Do you think? On a little bit of a tangent, because I always, especially from a coach speaking to a coach, that's part of the reason why I set up the podcast to speak to coaches such as yourselves, to develop myself as a coach. Mm-hmm. Do you think having the experience there of Steffi and Hayden and the other coaches that you've worked with has helped you develop as a coach, and added a lot more to your skill set? I know obviously you mentioned you started with the nutrition side of things, but then also the training side of things as well.
Oh, 100%. That experience is been the best and helped shape my coaching the most. Learning or meeting, again, you kind of said more of like meeting them and seeing them as normal people, but they're 100% normal, and it's been great meeting them and learning from them. But then I got to learn from our director of nutrition services, Francesco Catalano. He's an incredible coach, has been coaching 3 times as long as I've been coaching. So learning from him has been awesome. He is the smartest guy I know. I mean, a little bit biased here, but I think he's hands down like the best nutrition coach ever, and just one of the best coaches ever, and great guy. And I mean, Stephanie and Hayden again have been incredible to me and everything they've been teaching me. But that experience of working with clients and being coached by him is invaluable. I felt like after months of working with them and being trained by them and getting that experience with clients and him kind of like overseeing it and helping me essentially coach these clients in a way by overseeing like how I'm answering things and stuff like that, and asking me questions on like my feedback, that put me years ahead, 5-10 years ahead of coaches, especially if I was going to do that more on my own. So that experience has, yeah, helped tremendously. And I think, I mean, I was learning from the best, so it's hard not to get ahead in that case.
Yeah, definitely. I know that was a little bit of tangent, a little bit of a tangent there, but especially when you see, working for a company such as Hybrid, and working with the coaches that you're surrounded by. I know from we have younger coaches coming in. We have an internship program at the gym that I work at, and awesome. I often feel like sometimes younger coaches look at more senior coaches who have maybe been doing it a little bit longer, and they try and replicate that. And then obviously I'm looking at more experienced coaches to myself, and it's a knock-on effect. But I think the important thing there, and why I asked, is you've learned how you communicate with clients, but putting your own spin on it rather than not being trying to replicate what somebody else is doing, which I think is really important for maybe younger coaches getting involved to learn and be like, yes, you can follow this style and do follow these questions and what you want to ask and get out of working with clients, but put your own spin on it, put your own personality on it, rather than trying to be right. I want to try and be this person. Well, no, that's their style. You've got the knowledge is there, but it's putting your own spin on it, which I think sometimes, I know I did it as a young coach coming through. I'm going to be like, yeah, I'm going to be like this person. Oh no, actually, I'll put my own style on it a little bit. So obviously we touched on the hybrid strength coach, transitioning from the website. Quite a few different things on there, and the one that obviously saw that you were involved with is the hybrid build as well. Just want to give a little bit of a background to that, what the process is, and sort of touching on when people are looking to start building muscle. Where's a good place to start in terms of what level they're at, in terms of what program they should be starting in, and as well touching on what level of nutrition they should be starting on, because it's always that question of I want to build muscle, I want to lose fat, I want to get stronger. Okay, this is your starting point. We're not, because I feel like sometimes a lot of people will always look at the end product of right, I want to get to this, whereas okay, let's start here and then let's develop along.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. You're right. So there's so many people, I mean, myself included, have been caught up in that end product, which is more of you're focused on the outcome and you're making outcome-based goals, where really we want to be making behavior goals in a way that, for a lot of people, especially if you're starting just from scratch, I remember, especially when I started, is the behavior goal in that sense is I just need to get to the gym 3 times a week. Like that's more of the goal, and obviously the outcome is just one point in time, and the outcome essentially can change, and it might not necessarily happen, but you're going to learn more from those behaviors in that case. But so I'll touch a little bit on the hybrid build program. So the hybrid build program is essentially a power building program. So it's very strength focused at the start, where we have our compound lifts because people want to get stronger with the squat, bench, deadlift. So that's more movement focused. You're getting stronger with those movements specifically. We have that Discord group where we're focusing on technique, and in the program there's notes on technique every few weeks, and that's from going literally start to finish. So the first thing, for example, when you're squatting, the first thing you do is touch the barbell. So the first movement note we have strategy notes and movement notes within the program, We also have daily videos within the program. So every single day, it's a 10-minute video of me explaining the program, the intent of each exercise, and the intent of the movement notes, the strategy notes, because obviously there's different rep scheme, set scheme, and different intensity. And we don't want people going to RP 10 or whatever on day one, right? So the strategy notes of this is the intensity, this is why, and this is overall the intent of this day and how it's going to lead into the week. But just touching off that, so the movement note, for example, for the first few weeks for a hybrid build is the first thing you do is touching the barbell. So it's determining your grip. And whether you're beginner, intermediate, or more advanced, that grip is important because, again, it's how the bar is going to be on your back, and it's something you do repeatedly. We don't want to be going into competition and gripping the barbell here, like this narrow, our whole prep, and then we just forget everything because we're stressed or something like that. So it's really focusing on that, having consistent grip and finding a grip that's optimal for you. That's not only going to help reduce pain, because if you're trying to grip the bar past your mobility, you're probably going to get a little bit of shoulder pain, elbow pain, something like that, bicep tendonitis, whatever it is. So it's going through that. And then with the accessories after, so it's obviously focused squat, bench, deadlift. With the accessories after, that's more focused on not necessarily the movements, but training muscles rather than movement. So that's where it really becomes bodybuilder, evidence-based, tension, volume, relative intensity, to educating people on that through the daily videos and through the notes. And again, training muscles and not movements. What I mean by that is we can do a bicep curl and there's so many ways to get the weight up. Whereas if I'm beginner or immediate or advanced, it's we know the bicep flexes the arm and supinates the wrist. So it's like, why am I flexing my shoulder to get the weight up?
Yeah.
So it's more focused on training muscles than movements in that case. And that's really something we're trying to get across, because I mean, the number one driver of hypertrophy, but you can't just have this, but is tension. So we're trying to get tension across the fibers that we want to grow, right? So it's really touching on that. And then I'm not too concerned about like squat, bench, and deadlift in terms of building muscle in that program. Again, those are mainly for strength and improving on those movements. But then outside of that, it's people have physique goals, obviously, and it's touching on those and helping them understand this is how you're going to be training muscle. This is where you should feel it. This is all stuff I'm explaining in the daily videos. And this is how you train your lats. This is how you train your more upper back, rhomboids, mid trap, thing like that. Because if we're doing a lat pull down, for example, and the first thing I'm doing is retracting my shoulder blades, leaning back and going like this, pulling down here, that's my upper back. It may be called a lat pull down, but I'm doing it right now, and that with the intent of training my upper back. So it's the intent really matters for every single exercise within that program. So we're not only educating people as if it's one-on-one training. Again, that education portion is super important. We're not only educating people, and teaching them how to train on their own, but obviously that is going to help with their progress. We're getting them stronger, teaching them every step of the way. And then we have that community base within the program where if someone really doesn't understand something, I'm answering questions. Our doctors are helping guide them if they're working through something, have to make exercise substitutions. We have a great community of moderators that are supporting them, giving a thumbs up, like celebrating their PRs, and everyone else is celebrating PRs. There's been people saying they've trained alone, but they just feel so at home and as if they're in a gym, and they just love communicating with everyone. Because again, that group is going off 24/7 because there's people all across the world. So it can be 2 a.m. for me, but people are waking up talking about training. But that's the basis of that program. So it's evidence-based, using that practice, and then using our experience to shape everything, and having a strong, we like to say, the strongest community around. And then obviously you have a very technology savvy app with daily videos within it. You can log anything. You can see the exercise tutorials by just clicking on the exercise. And when you click on the exercise, you can view your full stats page and click on the date of whenever you did that. And now we're implementing, if I were to click on a day of the program that I did a year ago, I can upload videos within that day. So it would go not only to that day of the program, but then I can see videos I may have uploaded from that day. So I get a full review of my training session, especially if I filmed it all. I see all my stats, I see all my notes, and then I see the daily video. So it's like getting a replay of your whole workout. So we're just trying to make this the best experience possible. Obviously there's a focus on programming, but we want that focus on education and connection with the coaches and other people as well.
Absolutely, yeah. When you said there, a couple of times you mentioned, the community side of things, and the experience, training and education, which and the nutrition side of things, I think are really important. But equally, I always think it's good to feel a part of something. I always liken it to. I don't play as much rugby now, competing in powerlifting myself, but you always want to be part of feel as though you're part of a team or part of an environment, which is really good. When you were saying, yeah, even if you're training by yourself, and if the message board's going off, I can imagine people turning around and being like, "Oh, celebrating." Oh no, wait, actually, it's on my phone. That's where I'm going to support. But I think that's part of it, because I think people, still want that. Human element, and they're not just speaking to an artificial intelligence or anything like that. And especially over the last year or so with quarantine and all these sort of things, I think the community side of things is really important. Just touching on there, obviously you spoke about squat, bench and deadlift, and we spoken on the movement patterns. And it's interesting that you said it starts off when you first touch the barbell. I've seen people come into the gym and just load the barbell up straight away, don't think, and just go straight in and bench pressing, mm-hmm. or squatting. And then obviously going into the accessory exercises, which is focusing on the actual on the muscle side of things. When we're talking about beginners are coming in, or people who are starting a new program and they're looking up to other people, what they're doing, and you've mentioned sort of intent and knowing what's moving, how important is the weight that we're actually using compared to if we're using a lighter weight and actually intent, and training with intent and using correct technique to get a training stimulus, compared to the big main lifts in squat, bench and deadlift, compared to maybe some of the more accessory bodybuilding style exercises. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's relating to more of, again, we were saying training muscles and not movements. I mean, in the case of squat, bench, deadlift, that's when we're focused on training movements, where we're doing anything to lift heavy as possible. I mean, obviously we want good technique, but what I mean is, I'm not focused on building my quads necessarily for squat. I'm focusing on lifting as heavy as possible to competition standard. If I was more focused on building my quads, I might narrow my stance a bit, elevate my heel, and get my knee a little bit over more of my toes, right, in that case. So I'm not more focused on my quads, but touching on what was the last part of the question?
Difference in between when we're trying to use the certain amount of weight for the power, the main exercises compared to the bodybuilding size exercises, is weight, is the weight going to dictate the training stimulus, or is it the training with intent, using the right technique and making sure that we're targeting what we want to target out of that certain exercise?
Mm-hmm. Definitely more intent, and that's related to tension. I mean, obviously weight plays a role, but it's, if I'm, again, using the bicep analogy, if I'm curling 60s with extending my hips back, loading my hips, and then flexing my shoulder up, it's, if I'm curling 60s, my bicep might be doing 20 pounds of work, whereas the rest of my body is doing 6 pounds of work. So I'm getting that 20 pounds of tension across my bicep, and likely, since I'm using momentum through my hips and shoulder, likely I'm getting that tension across just a slim part of the movement. So maybe I'm getting that tension from here to here. So it's not across the full fiber, whereas the more of the mid-range, not the fully lengthened or fully shortened position. So that's where weight, it doesn't matter in that case. I mean, obviously you're going to get stronger and progress weight with proper technique, but the main thing is getting that tension and having that intent. When I'm doing these type of bodybuilding exercise, whatever you want to call it, or focus more on training muscles, is I'm not too concerned about the weight. I'm really focusing on getting tension across those fibers, because that is what is going to build muscle. The weight, I can throw on any weight, and not any weight, but I mean, I can throw on 100 curl a 100-pound barbell, whereas I can curl a 30-pound barbell, but if I'm getting tension across those fibers in the proper rep range and getting close to that and relative intensity 0 to 4 reps or whatever it is, that's going to be a better stimulus for my muscles. If I were then in comparison, if I were control to curl 70s and just throw it up there and use my hips and shoulders to get the weight up, that's more focused on the movement. Whereas again, I'm getting tension across maybe 50% of the fibers, and in reality lifting 20 pounds of my bicep rather than the 60 pounds that is getting up there.
Yeah. Do you think that's where sometimes people go wrong? Because, usually when people are looking to build muscle, that, set a dedicated amount of time, right? We're going to try and pack on as much muscle as we can. And it is one of those things where whether it's getting stronger, whether it's losing fat or building muscle, I think patience is a really, undervalued element that we need to have a look at in case of, right, well, I've done one session. Why aren't I absolutely shredded right now? Instead of thinking, right, okay, it's taking a little bit of a time. Do you think that's where people sometimes go wrong in terms of, right, well, I've done 4 weeks of really good technique. The weight isn't going up as fast as I can. I know. I'll just dive straight in and start bicep curling a little bit more weight. Do you reckon that's more of a hindrance than actually a help in terms of the mindset towards training and having that patience?
Yeah, that relates more to what we were saying at the start, is more outcome focused. When you're focused on that outcome every single day, that's when you're going to get frustrated at the end of the day. You're not going to be putting on massive amount of muscle day to day, even week to week. I mean, when we're explaining through the program, I know to explain, we're essentially going from block to block in comparison of how we're building muscle. So that's usually it's going to be around 12 weeks. So if you're taking progress pictures at the start and you take at the end, it's around 12 weeks. And when you're focusing too much on the outcomes, and again, if you want first at a competition or whatever, you're missing everything in between, and you don't understand that that outcome is literally at the end, and everything else is way ahead. So when you're just so focused on the outcome, you can't put as much into the process. And what was I going to say? The things you're learning in between. I can't remember what I was going to say now. The things you're learning essentially in between. I mean, you're just not going to get as much out of it, essentially, is what I was going to say. I can't remember the exact word, but you're not going to get as much out of it.
Yeah, definitely. It is one of those things that, the trust in the process. It's all those phrases get sort of thrown around a little bit, but it is one of those things where it's, right, we've dedicated enough time to do this. Right, this is how it's going to. It's a little bit like, I like to use the analogy of, when you go to school, you're at school for a certain amount of time, so many years. You can't just be like, right, I know. Oh well, I've had enough of the first 2 years at school. I'm going to try and finish it off and speed it off and try and do what I'm going to do in a couple of years' time. Like, it's a process. That's the whole reason why you go through the grades. That's why the test gets harder as you go. And I think that's similar with training. It's got to be a point where if we've dedicated enough time to it, because we run trials people come in and trial the gym. And it's, you're not going to achieve everything that you ever wanted to achieve in a week or 4 weeks. All these things take time. Just a couple of, when you were mentioning sort of about the exercise and using the technique side of things, there's some, conversations and thoughts that, when you mentioned about, building quads, about bringing your feet slightly further in, different exercises, or people might respond differently to different exercises to build their quads or build their arms. Do you think sometimes, rather than people focusing on technique and trying to get the most out of that exercises, people are looking for that special exercise, that secret sauce, if you like, that's going to allow them to all of a sudden, add in an exercise and their arms blow up, rather than, sticking with an exercise for a certain amount of time, seeing what they can actually get out of it, and then thinking, yeah, do you know what, actually, I'm not really getting as much of a training stimulus from this, so I'm going to swap from doing a dumbbell bicep curl to maybe using a cable machine or something like that.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good point. I think if people are just trying to copy someone or whatever they're doing, that's where you go wrong, because our bodies are entirely different. I'm going to move differently from someone. Like, I have good leverages for squatting. Whereas if someone was really, really tall and they wanted quads like me and they were doing a barbell squat, it's likely they're going to be a little bit more in hip extension, get less of a stimulus on their quad, more on their lower back and just overall and glutes, and more in that, again, hip extension position, and their knee is not going to travel for far ahead of their toes, less stimulus on the quads, or something for them if their intent was to build more quads might be a little bit better. I mean, it'd be obviously be better for me as well because of that external stability, but a little bit better for a hack squat where they're going to be more upright and force the machine and have that external stability. But again, they can, or even with an elevated heel, just to get their knees are essentially further ahead of their feet. So that's where they're targeting quads more. So if you're just trying to copy people in that sense, it's someone would try and copy me because say they like my quads or whatever, and they're not going to get as good of a stimulus on their quads. So that's why within the program, just hybrid overall, we're educating people in that sense, and we allow for substitutions because if they feel, a term I like to say is, I mean, that person is the expert of their body, but I'm not necessarily an expert in the field, but I'm their coach and guiding them because they're the expert of the body. I'm guiding them. They might say, again, like you were saying, I tried this, but this thing doesn't really work. I'm going to listen to that feedback. And our coaches are going to listen to that feedback, and we might give a suggestion that's related to it in that sense, and especially just seeing them move when they're posting form checks. So that was a good point too. And the other one, what was the second part of it that you said?
Just chatting about, if people are, if they're not getting the training stimulus from that exercise or not giving it enough time to get the training effect.
Time. That's another good point too. The time is very important. You need to be obviously skilled at the exercise and understand how to move in order to get that tension. And after that tension, you need volume acquired. Like if I'm doing, a good example is if I'm doing, again, like a bicep curl, but I'm not doing it correctly and I think it doesn't work, might be the fact that I'm not doing it correctly. So that example of the hack squat I was saying, which it might be better for someone, again, taller, longer limbs or longer legs. It's if they just tried it week one, but they were doing it completely incorrectly and they weren't doing it with the intent of training their quads or whatever, they might think it's not necessarily good for them. So you have to be very, very skilled at the exercise as well. That's where skill acquisition ties into that there.
Yeah, definitely.
Skilled, and that's why we have those movement notes within that program. The more skilled you are at the exercise, understanding how the muscle moves from insertion to origin, that's what's going to help you with that tension, and then you're applying overload across that tension, and essentially then you're going to be building muscle. But we still like variety within the program. Like I like to change exercises, not all exercises, but some every 6 weeks, sometimes every 12 weeks. And again, allowing for substitutions, but just because there may be, again, exercises that are better suited for someone, and you have to experiment and try a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to think about is skill acquisition, because it might be, depending on the level, it might be that if you're an intermediate or an advanced lifter, you might have done a couple of programs before, but might not have been doing it correctly. It might be that there's a couple of new exercises in there to actually hone in and be like, you refine it a little bit, because, I think it does take a long time to go from a beginner to an intermediate to advice. You've got to have, quite a few years under your belt of training. And then especially for beginners coming in, all of it's new. So, they're learning how to understand how their body works. As I found that interesting when you said that, you're the expert of your body. And as the coach watching them train or watching the training footage, it's a little bit like, well, how did that feel? Because what I'm seeing, is that replicating on how you're feeling? And sometimes, you're doing an exercise. I've had it before with clients in the gym. Where do you feel that? And they point to the muscle, and it's like, I didn't really want you feeling it there. And I think that does take time, because not only are we trying to get that training effect, but we're also trying to learn how to do that exercise properly. One thing when we're just talking about sort of exercise selection, and you mentioned there about changing some exercises every 6 weeks. What are your thoughts, or what are your experiences when I want to get bigger quads, I want to get bigger arms? If it's a balanced program, will the bigger arms, bigger legs naturally grow anyway, or is there a case of right, okay, so a hack squat, for example, is really good to build your quads. We're then now going to throw in another squat variation, or is it a case of if we have a balanced program across the board, everything will come up together, and then we just need to sprinkle in some other exercises to bring up those sort of, or add more volume into those areas that are lagging behind a little bit.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a really good question. I mean, it kind of depends. If you were building more quads, anything that's going to allow you to have a little bit more external stability is going to be better. So you would think in your head, I want as much external stability as possible. Again, being able to support myself where my lower back is essentially not fatiguing, my core isn't fatiguing. I don't have to hold the barbell here. My upper back isn't tired. My forearms aren't burning. For me, especially, I hold the bar fairly low when I'm doing a low bar back squat. I would be finish a set of 7 or 8 and my forearms are on fire. My quads are fine, but my forearms are on fire and I can barely hold the barbell. So I don't have to worry about that within the hack squat. So some people might think, well, let's just stick to things that require tons of external stability. But it's then when I go to say a squat, I've not trained that internal stability. I'm not training stability in general. How am I going to be able to resist force? If I can't resist force, I can't produce as much force. Essentially, a good example is you have a Z press and then you have a seated shoulder press. If I can't create enough internal stability and resist the force of falling back, I can't exert as much force pressing forward. So you still want to train stability in that sense, and that's going to translate and help you with those movements that are externally stabilized. Like if I have tons of internal stability, strong core muscles, everything, again, internal stability, that's going to help me lift a little bit more in terms of the hack squat. So there's changing variables in terms of that case, especially again, like stability and mobility. So there's changing variables in that case. And I mean, a part of it is changing exercises, because we don't want people just running the same thing forever. They get bored. I mean, that training motivation is also important. I might change something and have a new exercise that I like more. And the reason I might see more progress is because I was bored before and I like this exercise and I'm just putting more into it. So there's so many factors of changing an exercise. And then again, it also depends. If someone was doing something like a show, they might stick to the exact same exercise as close to the show as possible.
Yeah, definitely. That's the thing sometimes, and why I touched on it is I think everyone's looking for these new crazy exercises, but I think there's a good bank of exercises that we know that works, and they are going to get recycled. There's only so many variations of bicep curls. There'll be so many variations of rows that you can do, and a lot of them, are already being used. This kind of, I haven't seen a new exercise come out to this is the magic exercise that we need to develop you back. Having said that, though, you mentioned there about changing a few variables when we're working with exercises, and you said from the start, look, we're learning how to do the skill, learning how to do the exercise, focusing on the movements. Then we're going to target muscles and making sure that we're using the correct weight, so we're actually getting that training stimulus and making sure that our, using the example of biceps, making sure that we're using our full bicep rather than using our shoulder. When we start looking at different training modalities, like drop sets or clusters or whatever it may be, do you think, because they are being used and they are in programs, do you think that sometimes people are looking again at that end product and only trying to use them when it gets to a point where, right, okay, we've milked as much as we can out of this bank of exercises, out of this program, let's see how this goes? And as well, do different people respond differently to drop sets, clusters, or all those sort of things? Or what have you found to work a little bit better sort of across the board when we're trying to go from that sort of, this is what works, this is simple and effective, to, okay, now we're going to get a little bit more complex, and do we need to get more complex, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I don't do a lot of drop sets, cluster sets, things like that. More so because just learning the basics and again, understanding how muscles move from insertion to torsion and getting that proper tension is effective. Those drop sets, cluster sets, whatever, that's essentially just adding more volume. Some people swear by it, but they don't understand why they swear by it. It's, again, you're adding more volume and likely if you're doing, say, an exercise, if I was doing exercise with four reps, there's not going to be as much tension if I'm doing something from, or sorry, like say 1 rep, there's not going to be as much tension if I'm doing something with 6 reps. And being able to be under load for longer, it might help someone with that mind muscle connection and getting that tension. If I'm, again, bicep curl for 1 rep, there's likely I'm going to just have a better mind muscle connection, understand and getting that tension if I'm doing something with 10 reps. And especially when you get that drop set, if you're starting to feel that burn or that swelling, it's then when you're curling it, you really are feeling that last bit and you're trying to get more of a harder contraction. And again, if someone is the expert of their body, they might say, this drop set or cluster set or whatever is better for me. Understanding what they're saying by it's better for me is they feel more tension when they do that for a specific reason, because they might not feel tension the way I feel tension. I feel better when right away I have a good mind muscle connection, understanding how exercise, I can feel tension right away if I'm doing something like a row for lats. Like right away I can feel that from rep 1, from rep 2, whereas someone, they might feel it a little bit better within that cluster set, drop set. So if they're the expert of their body, I'm going to help guide them and understand why. And that might be something we implement. And again, it's a part of, if they have that belief, they're going to try a little bit harder. And it's something they might just enjoy. I mean, we forget that part of training. There's exercises in there. We might just throw it in like a sled, for example, if someone wanted to do that and thought it'd build their quads a little better. The hack squat, we'll throw it in because they enjoy it. I mean, having that connection, that community is number one. So I mean, having that connection and not just saying, no, I'm right, you're going to do this exercise because it is better. Someone's going to be like, well, I'm just going to do my own thing now.
Definitely. You mentioned a couple of things there. Obviously, you mentioning that you don't use a lot of that variety, and a lot of people don't. I'm a big believer in you can make a hell of a lot of progress and continue to keep making progress by doing the basics, just having a little bit of variety every now and again, swapping it, having a cycle of exercises. But what you said there is, I do clusters, I do drop sets. Well, why do you do that? Oh, well, I read this, or they don't have actually any affiliation. They've read something to it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've read things, watched things, seen what other coaches are doing, a bit. Oh, okay, I'm gonna give this a go. Mainly because I'm looking at what other people have done and then try to replicate it. But it's got to be one of those things where you said it there, enjoyment. If the client or the person doesn't enjoy, it might be physiologically the best thing for muscle building. However, if they don't enjoy it, they are not going to stick to the program. If they aren't going to stick to the program, they aren't going to build muscle. They aren't going to feel part of that community, and then they're just going to go look and look and do something else. And I think that's quite an important thing to remember, because there is lots of training variations, but for one person it might just be, okay, well, we just need to do standard sets. For another person, right, okay, this is actually finding that training stimulus, because not everyone's going to respond the same. Yes, we still need to have that skill and make sure that we're performing the exercise correctly, but we need to make sure that we're actually getting what we want out of the program, rather than just throwing these things in and expecting a result. When we're talking about the variation of exercises, and we mentioned there about, you might swap exercises every 6 weeks. We might have, a 12-week block where we're trying to build muscle. What's your thoughts on, the cycling of these programs? How often would you cycle them? When would you have a little bit of a break? Would you ever focus on, have a little bit more of a squat dominant sort of power building program, focus on deadlift or bench a little bit more, and have things a little bit more specific? How many times would you cycle those?
Mm-hmm. Within the base of our hybrid programming, so we'll have something, say, like hybrid build, where it's more focused. Again, you don't really get into that full specificity, where it might be strictly deadlift and there's a minimum amount of volume within squat and bench lift. But we would have type of like add-ons that are, again, optional if someone just wanted to do it. It might not be, they might still have a low squat in comparison to their deadlift, but their goals are, I want to do that, right? So we have kind of our base program, which is, again, targeting everything you can get away, I think, until you're very, very advanced and almost at that genetic capacity of you can get away without any specialization. Um, but whereas if someone's a lot more advanced, they might need to taper back on, say, something like volume for legs a little bit if they wanted to grow their upper body. But that is extreme advanced type of thing, more bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Like I've never done anything really specialization. I've seen, not that for me is going to relate to everyone else, but I'm saying I've considered myself fairly in that intermediate advanced, but I've never done any type of specialization. I'm still seeing progress there. So, sorry, I just want to circle back to one of the things you were talking about, connection again. If someone's saying cluster sets or drop sets, that might
Yeah.
be better for me. It's having that type of like belief and then asking them why. I really tie that in. I think this is where my nutritional knowledge working with clients helps. I really tie that in relating to nutrition because obviously there's so many ways to be in a calorie deficit, endless amount of ways. You have keto, you have vegan, you have whatever. And if people are the experts of their body, we're asking them the questions. If someone wants to be vegan, we're asking the questions why. It might be a certain belief, or they might just be like to eat that way. That might not be optimal for them in terms of, it might be a little bit better in terms of retaining muscle mass or building muscle mass to have more animal protein within your diet. That might be not be optimal. And if they just came to me and then they said, put me on a plan that's 100% ideal for me, it's, if I did that, they wouldn't really have a life because it would be strict tracking. It would be, you're not going out to eat, you're eating those certain foods. So it's like assigning the program, or essentially, yeah, the program and guide of what you're going to be teaching them towards their lifestyle, their goals, and then obviously their preferences is really matters, because whether they see a little bit more progress if they were on that specific plan, or if they see slightly less progress when they were on that diet they wanted to be on, but they enjoy it and they like it. That's what really matters. And in the end, they're actually probably going to see more progress on that thing they enjoy, because the thing I would assign them, if they wanted that specific eating whatever, it's, they likely wouldn't adhere to it again or just go somewhere else. So just wanted to tie that in the end, that
Yeah,
assigning things
definitely.
based off lifestyle preferences, goals really matters too, and that translates to training as well.
Absolutely, because I know we've spoken there about the training side of things, but then you've got to think sometimes they might have had a rubbish day at work. They might have had an
Yeah.
argument with their
Oh,
boyfriend or girlfriend
100%.
or anything like that. And all those things that we're talking about, that mind muscle connection, focusing on the skill, kind of goes out the window because they had a rubbish night's sleep, or they're stressed or anything. And that's why the last question now that I'll talk about in terms of cycling, your nutrition has to match your training as well. So the sort of last bit to touch on, when we're looking to build muscle, do you think sometimes when it's on those cycles and we're having those food plans, because yes, we want to adhere to it, and having a phase of, right, if we we're going to try and cut body fat, right, okay, we need to make sure that our social calendar matches that, because if you've got birthdays, anniversaries, loads of nights out, okay, well then this isn't going to be the optimal time to try and
Mhm.
it's not impossible, but it's going to be a lot more challenging. Do you think sometimes when people are doing cycles of muscle building, that they just keep the nutrition the same all the time, rather than matching their nutrition to where they want to, right, okay, this is where we're going to focus on being in that surplus, we're going to try and pack on as much muscle as we can, and then let's just level out a little bit, let's make sure that we're not overeating, match that to our training, and then get ready for the next cycle, if that makes sense.
So you're saying, should they be relating nutrition essentially to
Yeah,
that cycling?
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the way I like to explain it is muscle building is more of a signaling factor, and that's going to be highly dependent on training. And a lot of people actually tie in nutrition so much to that, whereas in reality, you don't have to be in a surplus to build muscle, but that is just a supporting factor in terms of building muscle. Imagine you just have a funnel and there's tons of things going within the funnel, and at the end, it's building muscle. Again, that surplus is just something that's more of a supporting factor. But if someone wanted to say, this next cycle, my goal is to build as much muscle as possible, absolutely, that's when we're going to be focusing again, nutrition, and something that's even more important actually in terms of building muscle in this case is going to be sleep. I mean, you need to be able to recover. And again, imagine if you have 0 hours of sleep, you're going into the gym, you're not going to get enough stimulus, tension,
Yeah.
volume, everything. And that kind of goes out the window, even if you ate an endless amount of calories. And in this case, that extreme example I gave, eating an endless amount of calories there, you're actually just going to gain a lot of body fat, right?
Yeah.
So there's so many things that play into it. But yeah, I mean, nutrition, I think people in terms of building muscle, if they're eating enough protein and at maintenance, eating enough carbohydrates, they're going to feel fine. And having that extra 20 grams within your muscle building phase or extra 200 calories, whatever, not going to make the biggest difference in comparison if you were getting an extra hour of sleep or again, or training hard. But yeah, if someone wanted to build as much muscle as possible within that phase, being in a surplus is going to help. It's just, I think it's not necessary, and there's not necessary in the sense that they could still build a lot of muscle without, and that they have to understand the cost to that there's going to be inevitable some type of body fat gain, and then vice versa to that. It's if they're cycling, they wanted to cut and maintain their muscle, there's going to be a cost of, but they wanted to be in a deficit, there's going to be a cost of, again, you might have things lined up like birthday parties, events like that and stuff, and it's not really realistic, and you might be a little bit frustrated. And food is a lot more than fuel. It's about that experience and memory. So you're going to be missing out there. And it's, if you're just trying to be in a deficit for that phase, that actually might just make the whole thing worse, because you're not going to be as happy from that, again, enjoying those experiences, making memories, and you're going to be just thinking about your training at that time. So there's so many factors that relate to it that way. But
absolutely, it's kind of, there's been a constant theme throughout the chat. I know we've talked a lot about the muscle building side of things and exercise selection and programming, but we started off, talking about, even though that they've got a program there, to have that human element, they feel as though they're part of a community, and they're enjoying it. And that's the same through, right, well, these could be the best exercises. This is how we're going to build bigger quads and bigger arms. Okay, well, they've actually got to enjoy that program. And then actually, the other layer before we even start, looking at exercise selection is, are you sleeping enough? Are you eating enough? How are your stress levels? And we can talk about, this is going to be the best exercise. You're going to feel this in your back. You're going to feel it, that mind muscle connection. But you've had a rubbish night's sleep, everything goes out the window a little bit. So it is about having that balance over everything. And when people are looking at these training strategies, looking at these programs, the program is only one part of it. There's the enjoyment side of things, the sleep and the stress that play a really important part. Quite a lot of topics and tangents thrown in there, what we've chatted about. The last question that I like to ask, though, from everything that we've chatted about, what would be your take-home points or words of wisdom?
I'm just going to build off that point one more, and then we'll take home points. But in this case, again, it kind of relates to this, but I think connection is essentially the most important thing with that client. But in this case, if someone's ultimate goal is building muscle and they have terrible sleep and are very high stress because of something, they just went through a divorce or they got laid off at work, whatever, and terrible sleep, and their ultimate goal is building muscle. And if they came into a session with me and they're telling me this, what is going to help them build muscle in this case? And the answer is I'm going to say, go home, get some sleep, relax. Yeah. I mean, that's going to help you. This training session, you're not going to put a lot into it. You're dead tired. You're going to get nothing out of it. So it's like, again, that relates all to connection. But yeah, the best case in this situation is going to be go home, get some rest, whatever. But so that ties into the last part of the take home message. I think every coach needs to understand is whether how much it doesn't really matter if you don't have any type of connection with that client. That's 100% the most important thing. Someone can know very little or less than you in terms of building muscle, but they might have an incredible connection with that client and you have a very poor connection. That client's going to build more muscle essentially from having with the other coach that has that connection. That's the most important thing. Kind of, again, an extreme analogy I like to make again is, if someone knew equal as mountain as me and I was your coach and we had an awesome connection, but if someone just came off on the street, didn't know you, was just rude and ignorant, and they were telling you the exact same advice, you'd be like, screw off, like go away. Who are you? Because they
Yeah,
just have no connection with you whatsoever. They could even know more than me and can be telling you better advice than me, but they have no connection with you whatsoever. And you're just like, I go away. I have this amazing coach, whatever, and they're telling me the right things. Then I
absolutely.
think that's a big take home message. That connection is going to be by far the most important thing.
Yeah, I think that the because essentially you touched on it a little bit earlier when we were chatting in terms of we get involved in training because we enjoy it. We get involved in coaching because we enjoy training, we enjoy the fitness side of things, and then we end up doing it as a job, which is awesome. But then also it is a case of the business side of things of we're in the business of working with people, and it is about creating relationships, and not always getting on with everybody, but being able to have that connection and put that message across to be like, look, I'm wanting to help you, I'm wanting to get you to achieve your goals. And yeah, why I had to laugh when you said there about saying sending the client home. I've actually done that before, and they look at you as if to be like, yeah, but I'm coming to the gym, like if I don't train, I'm not gonna make gains, I'm gonna lose all my results. Well, no, actually, like go home, go to sleep, eat some good food, and we'll go again tomorrow. And then actually,
Yeah, I love that.
yeah, that first initial thing of going home, what do you mean? And then the next day it's like getting a message or a phone call. Yeah, do you know what? Actually, that was
That was the
the
best
best
thing for
thing.
them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes it is that thing of you don't have to be have your eyes bleeding and your spine hanging out to try and build muscle. Sometimes it is a case of go home, get rest, and
Yeah,
give yourself the best possible chance of recovering, because I know we've spoken about the programming and the exercise selection, but if you're not recovering, we're not gonna build anything. So yeah, thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on, Simon. I know there was a few tangents and a lot of topics covered in there, but really enjoyed the chat. For everyone listening who might have any questions from what we've chatted about today, or want to get involved in some coaching with you, or get involved with the hybrid strength coach app, or the hybrid build app, where can people find you or ask questions?
they can find me at Simon Hybrid on Instagram, or they can join our free Discord server. We have a bunch of free resources there, and we're going to be opening up a chat there. We also, on the hybrid Instagram, we do tons of Instagram lives, and I just go on tangents based off what people are asking, and then within Discord, we're doing free lives there. So Instagram, Discord, we don't do Facebook anymore really, but those are the main ones.
Awesome. For everyone listening, if you haven't checked out the content and the work that Simon and Hybrid does, 100% go and check them out. Check out the podcast, check out the courses, check out the information that they're putting out there. I followed Hybrid for quite a long time, and the stuff that they put out there is awesome, and you can see the results that they get with the clients that it works. So thanks a lot, Simon, for taking the time to jump on today. Thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.